The sun is melting over Texas. The fields around me cracked open like broken pottery. And right as my last irrigation line gasps its final breath, I hear sprinklers on the other side of my fence, dozens of Loginkits pools splashing, fountains spraying, while my land dies under my boots. That was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting a drought. I was fighting a thief, and she had no idea I was about to flip her entire kingdom upside down. My name, José Flores. 40 years on this same patch of land, long enough to know every root, every fence post, every stubborn rock that refuses to move. And in all those decades, my well never once went dry. Not in heat waves, not during storms, not even in the summer of '03, the one locals still whisper about. So when my pipes started hissing nothing but hot air, something felt wrong. Really wrong. Wrong. I walked out to the main spigot, opened it, and stared as a puff of dust drifted out like an insult. Across the fence, Crescent Meadows, HOA, bright green grass, sprinklers shooting rainbows, a 3D fountain so loud it mocked the silence on my side. And leading the HOA with an iron manicure, Sarah Murphy. Platinum hair, pink blazer, even when it's 102 degrees. Pearl necklace so tight it could probably cut off her circulation. And the attitude of someone who believes the sun should ask her for permission to rise. She once fined me for letting my tractor face the wrong direction. I wasn't even in her HOA. Didn't matter. She acted like the whole county was her personal dollhouse. But I didn't think she could sink lower. Not until my well choked out. At first, I thought, fine. Pump sold. Maybe the drought's finally biting harder than usual. So I called Earl, the only plumber who still answers calls after sundown. Earl stomped around my property like he was interrogating it. Checked the pressure tank. Tapped pipes with his wrench like a doctor checking bones. After an hour, he spit in the dirt and said, "Jose, your pump ain't broke, and you ain't losing water. You're being robbed. Primera, la agedi." Then I stopped laughing, because Earl doesn't joke. He's too old for that. Stolen water? Who the hell steals water? I asked. Earl raised an eyebrow. Somebody with a real pretty lawn and zero conscience. That night, I couldn't sleep. The moon was bright, lighting up every dry crack across my soil. I kept hearing faint hissing water, moving where it shouldn't. So I grabbed a flashlight and walked the fence line. That's when I saw it. A strip of soil that was too smooth, too disturbed. Like someone had swept it clean to hide something. I knelt down, brushed the dirt aside. PVC pipe. New. White, cool to the touch. Running straight toward the H. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't drought. This wasn't coincidence. This was a pipeline feeding my water to their sprinklers. And the deeper I followed it, the more covered it became. Fresh mulch, decorative rock beds. Even flowers planted on top of the buried line, someone trying hard to hide their crime with petunias. I almost ripped it out right there. But then I pictured Sarah's smug face. She'd just deny everything. Blame the drought. Call, make racy. Maybe even drag the sheriff or some HOA lawyer into it. No. This needed proof. Real proof. So the next morning, the investigation began. I called Linda Hayes at the county office. An old friend. She pulled up the official utility blueprints. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Jose Crescent Meadows doesn't have a secondary water source. They're restricted to municipal supply only. Their usage should have dropped 40% this month. Someone was feeding them another source. My source, Linda's last words chilled me. If they're tapping your well, that's felony-level theft. Before I went any further, hey, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, this story only gets crazier from here. That night I set 2 trail cameras near the fence. One pointed at my irrigation line, one toward the HOA side. 2 nights later, Primera ka uge hedem, a maintenance contractor vest labeled Crescent Meadows HOA, kneeling by the pipe, flashlight in hand, twisting a valve that diverted my water into their system. My blood ran cold. Sarah wasn't just stealing water, she was stealing my family's legacy. And I knew exactly what I'd do next. I wouldn't shut the pipe off. Not yet. I'd let her keep drinking from my well, because the deeper she drank, the harder she'd choke when the truth came out. The morning after I caught that contractor on camera, I poured myself the strongest coffee I'd made all year. Not because I needed to wake up, but because I needed something steady to hold while I stared at the truth. Someone in the HOA, on Sarah's orders, had literally buried a straw into my land and started sipping. I played the footage again, the contractor crouched by the illegal pipe, twisting the valve like he was tuning a guitar. One turn my water pressure dropped. Another turn Crescent Meadows came alive again, with the sound of sprinklers. That was the part that stung. Not the theft. Not the dishonesty. But T.S., like my family, S-well was just a button they could push. But instead of anger, something else settled in my chests. Something colder, sharper. Strategy. I called Linda again at the county office. This time, she sounded nervous. José, I double-checked the permit history. Crescent Meadows filed a landscaping request 6 months ago. But it didn't include irrigation work. No trenches, no pumps. Definitely no new pipelines. So they lied, I said flatly. They lied. She confirmed, and if you can prove they crossed your property line, you've got a case powerful enough to bury that HOA for good. I thanked her and hung up. This wasn't going to be a shouting match across the fence. This was going to be precise. Calculated, surgical. The inspection. That night, armed with a borrowed inspection sneak camera, I slid the lens into the junction where my main line should have been untouched. The screen lit up with a crystal clear view of the damage. A T-split they'd installed. Brand new PVC, directly tapped into the artery that fed my crops. No erosion. No old weir. No accidental connection. This was deliberate, professional, and expensive. They hadn't just stolen water. They'd invested in stealing it. To be sure, I shut off my main valve for exactly 10 seconds. The HOA sprinklers stopped instantly. Then I opened it water shot back into their system, like nothing happened. I stared at the screen and muttered, well, ain't that proof? I wanted to rip that pipe out, right then and there. But Mark Reynolds' co-pay manager and bullheaded genius gave me better advice. You don't cut the line, he told me over coffee. Not yet. You let 'em keep stealing. Let 'em think you're blind. When thieves get comfortable, that's when they get stupid. And when they get stupid, they leave footprints. It was right. So primera, white. And the HOA got real stupid, real fast. The expansion. 2 weeks later, I noticed a brand new trench near the shared road. Fresh dirt. New pipe. No permits. They were expanding the theft. Not only stealing my water, but planning to funnel it toward the HOA clubhouse. That was the moment the last bit of restraint snapped inside me. Before sunrise the next morning, I walked to the Aligo Junction with gloves and calm anger. Quietly, I installed a high-pressure commercial lock cap, one they couldn't remove without specialized tools. Then I aimed a motion-triggered micro-camera right at the spot and walked away. By noon, Crescent Meadows transformed into a comedy show. Sprinklers sputtered and hissed. Fountains wheezed like dying elephants. Sarah Murphy stood in her yard with a garden hose, shaking it like it had betrayed her. She yelled into her phone. A maintenance truck pulled up. The contractor kneeled, opened the cover, and froze. The camera captured everything: the confusion, the panic, the frantic phone calls. No water, he told Sarah, shrugging. Her jaw clenched so tight it looked like she might crack a tooth. I sat on my porch drinking coffee, watching their chaos from a distance. This was just the opening act. The county drops in. When I finally sent the camera footage, meter logs, and permit violations to the county water authority, they acted fast. By the next afternoon, official white trucks parked all over Crescent Meadows. Inspectors tore up flower beds and popped open maintenance covers. Homeowners filmed from windows. Kids gawked. Dogs barked. Sarah stormed around in a pink blazer, like a flamingo with anger issues. Their private Facebook group exploded. Why are there county trucks outside? Does anyone know whose well we're using? We're losing water, what's happening? And my personal favorite, wait, whose well? Before I continue, if you're enjoying the story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Things are about to get a whole lot more intense. The next day, the county slammed the HOA with thousands in fines. Sarah Murphy was humiliated, and that was the moment she made the biggest mistake of her life. She came to my property, smiling, asking to talk. And that conversation, it changed everything. County inspectors had barely cleared out of Crescent Meadows when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside my gate. I wiped the dust off my hands and looked up. There she was, Sarah Murphy, pink blazer, oversized sunglasses, arms crossed like she owned the road she was standing on. She didn't step through my gate, not yet. She hovered like a stray cat, pretending it wasn't begging. "José," she said with a sugary smile that could rot steel, "we need to talk." I leaned against the fence post. "We do," she nodded, stepping closer, but staying just outside my property line. Funny how people who ignore boundaries suddenly respect them when the county's involved. "There's been a misunderstanding," she said, "in the irrigation system." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't say?" She clasped her hands dramatically. "You know how contractors are. They do things without explaining. It seems they may have accidentally connected something they shouldn't have." "Accidentally?" I repeated, staring right at her. "A simple mix-up," she insisted. I tilted my head. "So your contractor accidentally crawled under 2 fences, planted flowers on top of a trench, and installed a valve that redirects water uphill into your yard." Her smile cracked. Behind her, the HOA neighborhood shimmered in the heat-brown grass. Silent fountains, dead hedges drooping like wilted toast. And there she stood, trying to negotiate with the very man she'd mocked for years. She swallowed. "We can fix this quietly. No need for drama." "Oh, drama," I said. "You've been running a Broadway show over there." For a moment, the mask slipped. Her voice dropped low, sharp as a blade. "José, you don't want this to get worse." Primeda chuckled. "Worse for who?" She glanced sideways, checking if anyone was watching. This wasn't a truce. She wanted leverage. A deal. A way to save her reputation without admitting guilt. But the moment she spoke next, I knew she was in full panic mode. "The county's making a mistake," she whispered. "If you withdraw your complaint, we can." "Hold up!" I raised a hand. "I didn't file a complaint." She blinked hard. "What?" "The county came because of water logs and the footage I sent for verification. Not a complaint. That means the case is official. You can't negotiate it away." A long silence fell. You could practically hear her ego cracking like ice on a hot skillet. Then she tried one more tactic, something she'd never tried before. "C'est softenet. José, my amours are scared. They're blaming me. They want answers." Her voice shook. "Please, help me fix this." And in that moment, for just a second, she actually sounded human. But I didn't budge. "Sarah," I said quietly, "you stole from me. From my land. From my family. This isn't personal. This is legal." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't over," she snapped. She spun on her heel, stomped to her car, and tore out of my driveway so fast she nearly took half the dust with her. As she disappeared, I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, while I sat on my porch reviewing the camera footage one last time, I noticed something new. A fresh trench, fresh tire tracks, fresh movement near the shared access road. The HOA wasn't retreating. They were doubling down. Sarah Murphy had decided to fight dirty, and she was about to discover I had just begun fighting back. Because by the next morning, I wasn't just dealing with theft anymore. I was dealing with sabotage, and a high-stakes move that nearly turned the whole county against me. I woke the next morning to a strange buzzing in my gut, the kind you get when the land is trying to warn you. Farmers know that feeling. It's like the soil whispers before trouble arrives. And Traba arrived fast, just past sunrise. As I walked the fence line with my coffee, I saw it. Another disturbance in the dirt, this time closer to the road where the county lines merged. At first glance, it looked harmless, like someone had dragged something heavy. But as I knelt and brushed back the soil, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a drag mark. It was a trench, fresh, narrow, straight toward my water main. Someone had tried to tap the line again. They weren't hiding it with flowers. This time, they were rushing, panicking. That's when I noticed tire tracks thick, wide ones leading from the HOA side to the trench. A contractor's truck, maybe, or worse, an unlicensed crew. They weren't stealing water anymore. They were trying to bypass the county lockouts. They were desperate. I followed the trench with slow, deliberate steps, sensing a storm building behind the quiet. When I reached the end of it, I saw what they'd done. A half-finished splice attachment, a portable pressure pump, and a toolbox with the HOA logo still stamped on the lid. They had been here last night, trying to force their own water flow, trying to override my system, trying to sabotage my property before inspectors came back. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with anger so sharp it steadied my hands. Stealing was bad enough, but sabotaging? On my land. That crossed a line no one comes back from. Before I did anything else, I pulled out my phone and recorded everything. Every inch, every tool, every track. Evidence, clean and undeniable. Then I walked back to the house and replayed last night's motion footage because I had installed a camera exactly for this kind of stupidity. Sure enough, at 2:47 a.m., two men in unmarked vests approached the junction. They worked fast, clumsy, like they'd been rushed. One kept looking over his shoulder, the other struggled to attach the pump to the pipe. Then just after 3 a.m. a third figure arrived. Not a contractor. A woman, pink blazer, flashlight in hand, hands on hips. Sarah Murphy, supervising. It wasn't sabotage by accident. It was sabotage by orders. I paused the video, staring at her frozen face, glowing on the screen. The woman who accused me of being dramatic was now running a midnight crime scene like she was directing a play. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't petty. This was criminal. So, I called Mark Reynolds. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're calling because your crops are finally blooming." "No," I said. "I'm calling because the HOA just tried to hijack my water line again." Went Keat. "How bad?" "Bad enough that the sheriff's department is about to have a field day." The sheriff arrives. 2 hours later, Sheriff Collins, a big man with the patience of a saint and the temper of a rattlesnake, stood over the trench, shaking his head. "You're telling me," he said, scratching his beard, "they came on your property at 3 in the morning to rebuild an illegal water connection." "Not telling you," I answered. "Showing you." I handed him my phone with the footage. He watched it once, swore loudly. Watched it again. "That's Sarah Murphy," he said bluntly. "Yes, sir." "On your property?" "Yes, sir." "With 2 men cutting into your pipe?" "Yes, sir." He exhaled. "Well, she just turned a civil violation into a felony. You know that." I nodded. Slowly. "José," he added, "you want to press charges?" Before I could answer, the HOA's maintenance truck rolled up. Out jumped one of the men from the video, pale as a ghost. He froze when he saw the sheriff. "Morning," Collins said, tipping his hat. "Care to explain why your tire tracks match the ones in this trench?" The man stuttered, sweated, and then he said the words that sealed it all. "Sarah told us the farmer wouldn't mind." I nearly laughed. Wouldn't mind. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button if you're loving this story's pacing. We're just getting to the part where everything flips on its head. The sheriff gave me one last look. José, you realize your testimony could shut that HOA down forever? Primera did. But I also knew something he didn't. I wasn't done with Sarah Murphy. Not yet, because while the county was preparing to bury her in fines, I was preparing to buy the one thing she needed most. Her water supply. The sheriff left Crescent Meadows with a full report, 3 witness statements, and a copy of my midnight footage. The HOA board was already in meltdown, messages flying back and forth like sparks from a busted transformer. But Sarah went quiet. Too quiet. That's how you know someone like her is planning something. Not yelling, not arguing, calculating, and I needed to stay 3 steps ahead. I sat on my porch that evening, the sky painted orange and the cicadas buzzing like tiny generators. While I watched the sun dip beyond the fence line, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. You sitting down? He asked. I'm sitting, I replied. Well, guess what? Clearstream Utilities, the water company. They're broke, dead broke. They're looking for investors to keep the pipelines running. Primera Fros A. Clearstream wasn't just any company. It was the company Crescent Meadows relied on for municipal water, their lifeline, their pride, their landscaping's secret weapon. If I owned Clearstream, I wouldn't just control my own supply. I'd legally control theirs. Mark kept talking. Daniel Brookster, owner, can't keep up with maintenance. Equipment's failing. They need funding. Badly. My mind turned faster than gears in a well-oiled tractor. Water. The one thing Sarah took for granted, the one thing she used like it, was infinite. And now the company that delivered it was dangling by a thread. Mark, I said slowly, set up a meeting. The proposal 2 days later, I met Daniel at his cramped building that smelled like coffee, rust, and pipe lubricant. He looked exhausted, like a man who'd been patching leaks with duct tape and prayers. José, you're the one interested, he asked, surprised. I am, I replied. You know, this is a money pit, right? He chuckled nervously. Infrastructure's old, repairs are expensive. Customers complain non-stop. Especially, he rolled his eyes. That HOA of yours. Exactly why I'm here. His eyebrows shot up. I slid a folder across the table. Purchase offer. Repair plan, drought, regulation, compliance strategy. Nothing fancy, just solid, realistic, and honest. He skimmed it, then sat back in his chair. You're serious? As drought, I said. Daniel rubbed his jaw. Truth is, nobody else wants this headache. But you'd actually keep it alive. That's the plan. And what about the HOA? I smiled. They'll get exactly the water they earn. Daniel laughed a real, relieved laugh. You know what? They deserve it, José. Welcome to Clearstream Utilities. We shook hands. Who's like that? The faucet changed hands, and Sarah had no idea. She knew. Rules. The day my ownership became official, every Clearstream customer received a new drought policy in their inbox. A simple, clean message. Effective immediately. No ornamental water use during drought. No fontaines. No excessive lawn irrigation. Violators face fines or full suspension. 3 lines. No loopholes. No exemptions, not even for prestigious communities, which, of course, was the HOA's entire personality. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages. Jolene, my part-time secretary, peeked into my office, holding a stack of papers. Boss, Crescent Meadows sent 6 emails already. 6? I asked. She nodded. All from Sarah. I opened the first one. This is unacceptable. 10. The next. Our property values will plummet. 10. As HOA president, I demand a personal exemption to maintain community reputation. I laughed so hard, Jolene nearly dropped her coffee. Sarah still believed she lived in a world where her demands made the weather change. Not anymore. I typed a simple response, per county drought regulation. No exemptions will be granted. Compliance is mandatory. Send. Send. Meanwhile, Crescent Meadows started collapsing. Lawns faded, shrubs browned. The famous three-tier fountain serras, pride cracked in the sun like dry clay. Neighbors were furious. Homeowners whispered like worried chickens. Some even posted complaints online. And Sarah, she was unraveling in real time. Before I continue, tap that subscribe button if you haven't. The next part is where Sarah does something insane, and the entire town starts watching. Because the day after the restrictions went live, Sarah didn't call. She didn't email. She showed up at my office with a lawyer, and a threat so bold it nearly made me laugh out loud. The new drought rules had been active for barely a day when my office door slammed open so hard the blinds rattled. Jolene jumped in her seat. I looked up from my desk, and there she was, Sarah Murphy, wrapped in a beige power suit and boiling fury, marching in like she still owned half the county. Behind her came a polished lawyer carrying a briefcase too heavy for his confidence. "Mr. Flores," he said, adjusting his tie. "I'm attorney Blake Carson, representing Crescent Meadows H. Primera Lea, Nedback." "Of course you are," Sarah snapped. "You've crossed the line, Jose." "Funny," I said. "I thought that's what your contractor did at 3 a.m. Carson opened a folder and slid it across my desk like a royal decree. "We're filing an injunction to reverse your water restrictions. The HOA believes you targeted them unfairly." I stared at him, then burst into a laugh. "Let me get this straight," I said. "Your client illegally tapped my well, hid the evidence with flower beds, sabotaged my pipe at night, and I'm the problem." Sarah slammed a hand on my desk. "It was never proven." I tapped my phone and turned the screen toward her. There she was standing in the moonlight over the trench, flashlight in hand, supervising the illegal hookup herself. The color drained from her face. Carson leaned closer and whispered, "Mrs. Murphy, is that you?" She didn't answer. Her jaw tightened so hard she could have cracked her own teeth. Then she finally hissed, "You think you've won, old man? You think owning a water company makes you powerful?" "No," I said quietly. Being honest as her breath caught, Carson gently closed his folder, as if the case had dissolved in his hands. "Mr. Flores, perhaps settlement is possible." "There is no settlement," I said, "unless your client pays her fines, accepts responsibility, and apologizes publicly." Carson blinked. "That's not a normal settlement. It's the only one." Sarah's face twisted with rage. "You're delusional." "No," I said. "I'm hydrated." Even Jolene snorted at that one. Sarah stormed out, heels stabbing the floor. Carson followed, looking like a man walking behind a runaway train. Collapse. By the next morning, Crescent Meadows' private chat group had exploded. "Did Sarah bring a lawyer? Why are we being sued?" "My lawn is dead." Someone said the sheriff has video evidences that True, who approved the illegal pipeline. Sarah is hiding something. Then someone posted, "Jose owns the water company." Silence flooded the chat. Then panic. "No way. This whole time, we're finished. She lied to us. She used our fees to cover her mess." That evening, Crescent Meadows held an emergency meeting in their community Halnoa, dead plants in the corner, and every homeowner sweating with frustration. Reports later said, Sarah walked in, still trying to play queen. She didn't leave that way. Residents demanded answers. She tried excuses. She tried deflection. She even tried blaming the contractors. But the evidence was undeniable, and the board voted unanimously remove her as HOA president. Some said she cried. Some said she cursed. Some said she simply walked out in silence. However it happened, one thing was certain. Her reign was over. The quiet aftermath. A few weeks passed. The county finished their investigation. Fines were issued. Papers were filed. The illegal lines were torn out completely. For the first time in years, the land felt calm. I stood by my fields one sunset, watching water flow through my irrigation. Lines clean. Steady, honest water. The kind that belongs to the soil, not to greed. Jolene walked up beside me. "Boss, you think she'd come back?" I shook my head. No. Her fight wasn't with me. It was with the truth. And she lost. A long silence settled, peaceful, earned. "This whole war," she murmured. "Over water? Water!" I said. An ego. The wind rolled across my fields, carrying the cool scent of soil, finally at ease. For months I'd fought thieves, lies, sabotage, and a queen who thought she controlled the rain. All it took was honesty. Hudson's a faucet. Because justice doesn't always arrive with a hammer. Sometimes it arrives with a steady drip, until the truth fills every empty space. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, my fields glowing gold, I whispered to myself, "It's over." And finally, it was.